minutes as well. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
I'm, for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Stephanie, the seminary intern here at Holland UCC and co-chair of the Justice Action Team. I'm grateful that all of you could join us tonight. It's so good to be in a virtual room with all of you. Looking forward to being in an actual room with all of you soon. And yeah, Andy, if you want to go ahead and do some introductions, and other people might join as we go, but it looks like a pretty good group for now. So
Yeah, sounds good. My name is Andy. Um, I met Matt a few years ago. One thing about working in the prison is there's certain names that keep coming up time and time again. And Doug Chapkus, who is Matt's dad, is a person that I met, I don't know, many years ago. And his name just kept coming up. And he, an organization called Humanity for Prisoners. So got to know Doug inside prison and different things like that, and learn about his organization. And I'm not going to steal all Matt's thunder. I'll let him describe what the organization does. But how old is your dad, Matt?
He is 84.
84. So
Yep.
he thought he deserved to take a little time and kick back a little bit. And Matt has been working with him for a few years. And Matt is about a year ago, was it, Matt? You took over the helm.
Almost 2 now.
2, okay.
Yep.
Over the organization. And Doug's still, he's still active.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's his name still pops up. So anyway, but Matt has taken over, and it's been a wonderful thing, Matt. From the little bit that I know from you, that the interactions that we had, I mean, you just never know how it's going to go from one generation to the next generation. But Matt is doing just an amazing job, and I think we'll be able to take this organization to the next level, kind of like my son with me. So it's a good thing. So anyway, Matt, I guess this is part of Holland UCC group, and we just want you to, we're taking different segments, different things in life. We're taking race, prison, bunch of different things, homelessness and blah, 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 all these different topics. And we're kind of learning about them and seeing how we can interact and how we can help those organizations, help those causes. And when the topic of prison came up with Karen and my background and that kind of stuff, we wanted somebody to kind of tell us what's going on. So I guess, tell us what's going on, Matt. You of anybody is connected to the prison system, other than being inside, you're probably closer than anybody. So
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's true. Right now, nobody's getting inside, other than the people that work there. But I'll talk a little bit about that. I'll give a real brief introduction of Humanity for Prisoners for those who don't know us. It's our 20th year this year. It'll be our 20th anniversary coming up late this summer. So it's an organization started by my dad, Doug Chapkus, and he was working with a wrongfully convicted inmate at the time by the name of Maurice Carter. And they had formed an organization, and our legal name is still Innocent, was the name of the organization. And it was going to be an operation of support for the wrongly convicted. That was their catch line. And they started with that mission. Doug and Maurice were going to do that. They were going to get Maurice out. They were going to get him freed, and Maurice was going to be the spokesperson. They were going to grow this great organization. In 2004, so about 3 years after the organization received its nonprofit status, we found out Maurice was really sick. He had hepatitis, cirrhosis of the liver, hepatitis C, and it was in stage. He was not in good shape. And so the focus switched from getting Maurice's conviction overturned to just getting Maurice out in any way, shape, or form, to try and get him a liver transplant, because when you're in prison, you are not eligible for any sort of organ transplant. So They did work very carefully on that. A big campaign went in. There was a truck outside Governor Granholm's window with a billboard on it saying, please commute the sentence of Maurice Carter. And she did. In 2004, on July 24th, it happened to be my birthday. I remember it very well. Maurice was freed from prison, and he enjoyed 3 months and 1 day of freedom before his liver disease got to him. Unfortunately, his medical condition was just too far deteriorated. But what we learned about during that time was how many guys are experiencing other issues in prison, and it doesn't matter if they're wrongfully convicted or not. They're having these same sort of health issues where their hepatitis is ignored for years, even though the Department of Corrections knew about it. And the other part was Doug's like me. I worked in radio. Doug grew up in radio. He worked in radio for a long time. We're not attorneys. And if you want to free wrongfully convicted people, you really need to have a good knowledge of the legal system. And there's a lot of great groups that do that, but there's not a lot of groups that are helping out these guys with these individual needs. So in 2008, the organization shifted over from being innocent to being Humanity for Prisoners. And we found our lane here, focused just on the Michigan Department of Corrections. And that's where we work today, just with inmates in the Michigan Department of Corrections. I came on board in 2013 full-time. And at that point, we thought we were really busy. We were getting about 130 requests for assistance every month. And last year, we averaged about 1,600 requests for assistance every month. So just in the prior year, we had an 88% increase in the amount of requests for assistance. And we're dealing with things like medical issues, helping them review their medical issues. We have a team of doctors and volunteers that help us. We also deal with Freedom of Information Act requests. Michigan's one of only a couple states that doesn't allow prisoners to file their own FOIA requests. So we assist with a lot of that. We help with finding lost friends and family. We help with getting them prepared to see the parole board, writing a commutation. And then we help with other simple matters. Sometimes a guy just can't remember the lyrics to a song, or he needs a picture and he's got nobody else, no friends or family to send it to him. And so then I call a volunteer like Andy up and I say, Andy, we need a little help. And we help fill these needs that all these prisoners have. One client messaged me back right before Christmas, and all he said was, thanks for all you and your team do for us. No one works on this scale in this realm as hard as you do. And I think he pretty much nailed that. You know, when you look at prisoners and their situations, they're reminded of their past a lot. And so I want to put everybody in just a little uncomfortable spot for just a moment. And I want you each to think about a moment in life where you made a mistake and you know you made a mistake and you had to sit with that mistake. Now imagine giving that mistake a number. So instead of going by your name, you go by a 6-digit number instead. And imagine the clothes you wear, the food schedule that's given to you. These are things that are reminders every day of that mistake. This is what our prisoners are dealing with each and every day. And it's you know, it's a daily reminder to them that, you know, they're separated from us. It's a time that I'd like to forget. When I think about that time in my life, I would like to forget it. And I'm sure everybody else would as well. It's just not a happy place. But when they come to Humanity for Prisoners, one thing I want them all to know right away is we're not looking at that past. We don't call them prisoners, we call them clients. We try and find what name they want to go by. Sometimes it's not the name that's on their prison ID. We try and stand with them where they want to stand. A couple years ago, we had Father Greg Boyle over, and he talked about his work with gangs. But a couple lines that he said really stood true with us. He said, "You stand with the belligerent, the surly, and the badly behaved until bad behavior is recognized for the language that it is, the vocabulary of the deeply wounded, and of those whose burdens are more than they can bear." We deal with a lot of broken people, and we acknowledge ourselves that we're broken people that are working with them. and we're no better than them. We're all made from the same creator. We all bleed the same blood, and we do our best to let our clients know that each and every day. When you talk about some of the things that are going on in prison, you still have to talk right now about COVID. It is the biggest issue that we're facing. You know, COVID is a situation where it has stopped all in-person visits for the last 10 months. So over the holidays, while people were getting together either in person in small groups or some people in larger groups if they chose to, or Zoom or whatever the case may be, these prisoners didn't even get a chance to look face to face, to speak with their loved ones in a close proximity. And the video visits are available in just a handful of prisons right now. So for most, they've gone 10 months, darn near a year now, without seeing the face of a loved one, without seeing the face of a friend, instead just dealing with the guards and everybody that they deal with every day. Today, 17 of Michigan's 31 prisons are considered in COVID outbreak status, meaning it's out of control. The spread is out of control. I'd love to say that's a major improvement, but I gave a very similar speech the last weekend of December, and the number was 18. So it's only gone down one prison since then. 22,000 of Michigan's 35,000 prisoners have tested positive. 2,900 state employees have tested positive. 4 state employees have passed away, and 132 prisoners have passed away from COVID, including over 20 clients that I've served and our organization has served here at Humanity for Prisoners. And right now, the prisoners know that there's still no stopping it. They haven't been given the vaccines yet. We're told that 65 and over will start getting them soon. But the prisoners know that no prisoner brought COVID into the prisons because they all stayed in those confined spaces. It was someone else coming in from the outside. You've got guys packed in tiny rooms, 8 men, 4 bunk beds, 1 in each corner. They can't get away from it. Everybody's a close contact. Once you're a close contact, you're put into a room with other close contacts. So even if you weren't positive from that exposure, while you're in that group with other close contacts, chances are very high you're gonna get exposed. The state didn't learn anything from their response to COVID in the first couple prisons where they had outbreaks. They've really made very little adjustments or looked for other states who are doing it well, because there are a couple states who are managing their outbreaks in much better ways. And so it's a helpless feeling sometimes for the prisoners. You know, the holidays, all of them went by with no visits. I mean, I got to see my parents through video chat instead of in person, but I still got that, and none of them had that. No matter what, and if they want to talk on the phones, that's another situation where if you're lucky, you get to do it. There are prisons, including up in Muskegon, there's actually a spot for more phones in the units. And the department has said that right now they're not going to add those phones because it doesn't encourage social distancing. So they can't have the visits. So they can't get to the phone sometimes. Those phones, we want them to add more. There are opportunities, there are places for them to add more phones, and it's just a simple way to add more communication, just to try and give them some sort of outside contact. If you're in COVID quarantine, it's even worse. You're put in a room, you don't even get your property until you've cleared. Sometimes you're moved to a different facility and you don't know where your property is. And there's other people like Maurice Carter who are in there. Imagine being wrongfully convicted and then having to go through all this, sitting there in a place where you know you're not supposed to be, and yet you are exposed to all these conditions. Even if our court system was 99% perfect on their convictions, that would be 350 men and women in the system that are there for the wrong reason or for no reason at all. So it's a difficult day. It's a difficult time right now in prison. Men and women are struggling to get programming that they want, because there's so many limits on gatherings, and there's so many limits on who can come in. But yet the programming is required by the parole board for them to get their parole. And so instead of having a chance to earn their parole by taking the class or waiving the requirement, the Department of Corrections and the parole board has just given these people continuations. You stay another year, hopefully we get it figured out. Hopefully we can get you the class that we're requiring you to take. And these men and women write to me and say, what more can I do? And I wish I had great answers for all of them, other than asking for appeals, asking for reconsideration. So I've talked a fair amount. I'll talk a little bit more just about the future of HFP and what's going on. You know, if anything I've said interests you at all, there's a number of different ways you can get involved in these situations. The first and the biggest one is to contact your state representatives, your state senators, and the governor, and let them know you're concerned about the prison conditions, about the fact that the parole board is requiring things that they can't even provide. Social distancing isn't possible right now. So just encourage them to look into the ways parole eligible prisoners, find different ways to release them, find different ways that the state can take care of them, find them programming outside, waive the programming requirement, whatever the case may be. These are arbitrary requirements that are created by the parole board. Their sentence has been served that they were given in the court of law. So it's time to start holding our representatives accountable and ask them why we're spending more money on corrections than we're spending on education. Ask them some hard questions. Also keep an eye on who you're voting for. You know, the war on drugs from the 80s has created just a big ripple effect for years and years and years. It's systematic. There's issues on so many different levels, and we want people that are for prison reform. We want people that understand our judicial system is not evenly balanced right now. You know, someone who's my color and someone who's a different color are going to get different sentences in different counties. It's just the way things are. If you want to get more involved, if you want to be a pen pal, we know a great organization that we can get you connected with, just so you can start writing anonymously one-on-one with prisoner, just to start a relationship. They've got a waiting list of prisoners usually that want to have someone to talk to. It's a simple way you can do it by email. If you want to get more involved in that, if you have some professional knowledge that you think can help us in some way, we're always taking volunteers. I'm trying to hire a volunteer manager right now. Actually, I've got her hired. I'm trying to hire someone else to take her position so I can have a volunteer manager. So we need more volunteers. We need more people to help. We also need your support. We're a nonprofit organization. Like I said, we grew by 88% in the number of requests we had for help last year. I can't grow my staff by 88%. I can't get my budget to grow by 88% in a year. I wish I could, but any support that you can provide can certainly help us get toward that goal for this year. We are going to grow our staff. We added one, we're adding a second. So we're taking a little bit of a leap of faith this year, having faith that we're going to be provided for as we continue these services. It's a challenging job. I won't lie about that, but there are rewards every day when we hear from men and women who are just grateful that someone's acknowledged their humanity, recognize them as someone's child, as someone important, recognize their humanness. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I think we've got plenty of time for questions, but that's probably more than enough of me just straight talking to everybody. So I don't know how you guys work the Q&A, but I'm down for it whichever way they come.
Yeah, I'll echo that. Whatever works best, whether it's typing in the chat or feel free to just unmute yourself and offer questions. Thanks for all of that information, Matt. It'd be great if, I don't know if you or maybe through Andy can give us some links or something, if you've got anything available so we can access some of those ways to support. Feel free to put it in the chat, or we can, distribute it later as well. But
okay, absolutely.
Thanks.
questions, plural? Is it okay to go ahead, Steph, and ask? Yeah. Excellent program and presentation, Matt. Thank you. And made a lot of notes. I kind of help us a scribe sometimes around here, and I just want to fill in a couple gaps to make sure I have a couple things right. You had your number of requests per month. Did I get that right? 1,600 was that in a month?
Yeah, that's what we do a month now. We did in 2019, it was 9,880, I think was our number of requests for assistance. And last year
per month.
That was for the whole year in 2019. We had 9,800. And then, boy, I'm not going to remember what our number was exactly last year off the top of my head. I'll pull it up just a second, but I know. Okay, so last year, our total request for assistance was 18,610.
Wow.
So I take that back. It's 1,500 a month, 1,550 a month, somewhere in that.
Wow.
I have a question. Studying the new Jim Crow and various other things, my focus has really been drawn to Black prisoners.
Yep.
And the differential treatment they receive all through the system. Many years ago, when I was teaching in Battle Creek, I had a 12-year-old Black kid who got stabbed in the hall and almost died. And then I went on and did many other things. And I ran into someone who had known that kid. And I said, "What happened to Archie?" And he said, "Well, what would you guess?" And I said, "I hope he didn't go to prison, but I'm really afraid he would." And he was in prison in Michigan. So I take it real personally. I wonder if you have some data on the people who request your assistance. How many of the ones who are believed to be innocent are Black, or what percentage?
I don't have that. I wouldn't have that number right off the top of my head. And if I had to guess, it was probably 75%.
Wow. Okay.
Just because, you know, there's so many different factors that go into it, from the defense attorney that you can afford or the defense attorney that's assigned for you. You know, there's so many factors that go into it. And you're right, race is a huge one. What county you're in is a huge one. You know, I know of people who, we had a client who got freed last year, almost exactly a year ago, served 39 years for stealing $24 from an ice cream cart. An African-American man. And I compare it to just some friends I went to school with who got in trouble for 10 times more serious issues and just got a slap on the wrist instead. And so it's there. It's, you know, I think we try and deal with it simply through our work day to day by treating everyone equally and treating everyone fairly, but there are other organizations out of Southeast Michigan that look more carefully, particularly at the race component. And where that plays into it. I wish we could, but you know, there's only so many things that a tiny nonprofit can handle.
Do you work with all the prisons or just West Michigan?
No, all the state level prisons, every single one of them. Most of our communication is done through email. A decent percent, we'll maybe get 5 to 10 letters in the mail a day, but we normally get about 50 to 75 emails through our email inbox every day. And then depending on, I wish I could predict why the phone rings when it does, so I could tell more people to come in so I don't have to deal with it all the time. But you know, we do get some phone calls, but most of our communication is written or email communication that we do. And that frees us up to help anybody anywhere in any facility.
Thank you.
You bet.
Matt, on the email or regular snail mail, and you said there's a pen pal. Is that a separate group or is that within within Humanity for Prisoners, the pen pal?
It's a separate group, and it's actually a separate group that we kind of helped get going, but now they've actually been absorbed by 70x7, the reentry group out of Holland.
Yep.
But the group is called Cards for Prisoners. And she works with everybody, sets everybody up with someone to write to, and they actually do use the JPay email system, but I think most of the communication is just on email through a couple central figures at Cards for Prisoners who read the messages and then move them on, just to make sure that what the prisoners are sending out as requests or whatever isn't out of line. Just to, sometimes they start asking for money and other things, and Cards for Prisoners has certain rules about that need to be followed. So.
Thank you. And I asked that because I've got a college friend in a federal prison in Ohio, and our other college friends email him.
Yep.
I always write him letters, and he seems to really, really like that because he can reread them and write back to me and stuff. So the pen pal thing may be where I would want to plug in. I have a question about what you said about legislators and legislation. And I've done what you were suggesting about in the last 3 months, several letters to my rep and senator and the governor about prisoners and COVID and that sort of thing, just generally. But I've also learned over the years that sometimes it's really important if there is specific legislation to support. And is there any now or any on the horizon you think we should support?
Okay, I'm going to give you the name of another organization because they ride completely in this lane. It's called Safe and Just Michigan. They're based out of Lansing, and they are focused on prison reform through legislation. That's what they do.
Andy's told us.
Yeah, and like,
Sorry.
even when inmates come and ask me questions, I steer all those questions to Safe and Just because they know so much about it. They do send out regular updates. I don't know. I know there was some last ditch efforts right at the end of the year last year before in the lame duck session that didn't really go anywhere. I don't know of anything going on right now. There was a number of issues as far as expungement and things that did recently get passed by the jail task force that helped reform some issues on that front. We were hopeful that they would maybe consider a similar prison task force, but it doesn't sound like that's on the horizon anytime soon. But Safe and Just is really a far better source. I don't mean to not answer your question, but honestly, I get so deep into the stuff that we do. I trust Safe and Just when they tell me, hey, it's time to contact someone, then I'm going to contact someone, and I let them ride in that lane.
And Andy has told us about them, so we'll direct our questions there to them. When you talked about COVID in prisons right now, you talked about the number infected, 22,000 out of 35,000. And did you also give a number, best knowledge you have at this point about prisoner deaths so far? Did you say deaths too?
Yeah, 132 deaths.
Thank you. Let somebody else take a turn.
Hey, Matt, let me ask the tough question, the devil's advocate. So these people have done some very horrible things. They're there, most of them are there in prison for a reason. How do you reconcile, or why do you do this? Why do you care about them? You know what I mean?
Right.
You say I do too, but I mean, why?
Right.
Why do you, and why does the organization care about them?
Well, we talked about it, or I talked about it at the beginning. I've made more than my share of mistakes. I've made criminal level mistakes in my life that don't show up on my record, but I've made them, and I recognize the fact that if I was a different race, probably be a very different story in my life and in my upbringing and in my early years. and I had the benefit of white privilege that got me through a lot of things. And I recognized that very early before I think the word white privilege was really understood, but I understood that I was in a place where, other people didn't have the same opportunities. And that was because I had a dad that showed me those opportunities. As I went through college making stupid mistakes, my dad's working on Maurice Carter and trying to get him free from prison for something he didn't do. So I lived all that stuff growing up as well. Those were my formative years growing up with Maurice Carter. He held my baby Hannah, who's going to be an adult this year, who's turning 18. It was all part of my life. And honestly, why I got into this business is because God kind of shoved me this way. To be perfectly honest, I had doors closed on me. For those who don't know, I'm also a sports broadcaster by trade. I still do a little bit of sports broadcasting. I was actually down in Ford Field last week doing some high school football. But that was a full-time job for me at one point, and it became very clear that that wasn't going to work for me to be a full-time job. And other openings came up, and my dad had such a big need, and he had a need in areas where I had skills, that it was quite evident, okay, this is a path I need to at least walk down for a little while and see where it's going. And once I got here, and now in the last few years, as we've continued to grow and get into this, I recognize more and more that these men and women that we work with are someone's son and daughters. Often we get the calls from the moms or the husband or the wives or whoever. There's people that are still caring for them, but maybe aren't able to, don't know what to do, don't know how to help, don't know this system, don't know who to talk to, where to go. And there's no other organization like Humanity for Prisoners in any other state that we know of. Before I get out of here, I want to help them at least have the vision to expand that. So that's not the case. So other states can start having similar organizations like this, because, if a retail organization had 88% growth in 1 year, there'd be franchise people jumping all over them, trying to get them to grow into other areas. We've got that kind of growth here at Humanity for Prisoners. So we're really excited about the product. But we're doing it because we recognize that these men and women have needs. 90% of them, somewhere in that neighborhood, are going to be released someday. They're going to be parole eligible. They're going to be able to get out. That means they're going to be our neighbors again. And how we're taking care of them now, and how we're treating them now, and how we recognize them now is going to have a direct impact on the way they act when they walk out. And so I guess in some ways it's just, I feel responsibility right now. I want to be able to do something where I get done at the end of my day every day, and I know that I've done something for someone that they couldn't do on their own, that they didn't know how to do on their own. My wife Melissa works full time for us now, and when I started doing this, she was not interested in it at all. She was kind of scared of it. She's a full-time employee now. I'll come downstairs. She's the one that goes through our mail and our email and everything. And I'll come downstairs once in a while when she's going through mail, and she'll just be crying mess, reading a letter from someone, because we just get these heartbreaking stories, and these people don't know where to go. And so I hope that we provide them just a safe place where they feel welcome, where they're recognized. I wish I had the answers to every single problem that came our way. I don't. There are some things that we can't, it's too big of a system. Everybody was worried about COVID coming in, and yeah, we could see it. And there was just, one man can't stop a flood. It was just, there was nothing we could do. And so there's days where there's helpless feelings about what we do as well. But we care about these men and women that we work with. We recognize that they're important, even if they're not going to be released someday. Their lives are still important, because at one point, someone held them as a baby and said, "That's my baby." So we're here to take care of everybody's babies. Sometimes they're a little harder to deal with. Sometimes they're easy to deal with. Sometimes the cases are rewarding. Sometimes the cases are frustrating. But we want to be here. We want to try and care for them all. And, as we continue to grow, that's going to become more and more of a challenge, but I'm going to do my dang best to make sure that we're here for them.
Good answer.
Probably a little longer than what you asked for, but That's my radio side coming out, sorry.
I have a quick question. How do prisoners find out about you? Like, is it just word of mouth from person to person?
That's probably, well, that's definitely the majority of it. We get messages every day in our email. And the way the prison email system works is a prisoner can't send an email out until someone has contacted them. So we, from our office, have to add the prisoner to our list on the email system, so then we can communicate with them. So we'll get messages every day, five, 6, 7, sometimes 10 or 15 messages every day with, hey, this guy has a problem, he needs help with the Freedom of Information Act, or he's got a medical issue, or he's getting ready for parole and he doesn't have a list of any resources in this county, can you help him out? And so every day those come in. We do have a website, humanityforprisoners.org. I should have probably mentioned that a long time ago, but it's a place where people find us as well. And as long as I'm doing my responsibility and checking the email inbox every day, we generally try and get back fairly quickly to inquiries that come in through there. And then, other people just find us in a lot of different ways, from word of mouth. People call us, there are groups of prisoner wives that have Facebook groups, or prisoner families, and our names get passed through those circles quite a bit as well. So majority comes from other prisoners, but they come at us from all different directions every day.
Thank you.
You bet.
I'm curious about your auspices, your source of funding, how churches are involved, and if the prisoners have to receive some sort of religious whatever in order to have your services.
No, we're a 501c3 organization, so we work with anybody, any religion or lack of religion, any sexual identity, gender identity. Every single person is welcome here to our services. We are based on Christian values that I was raised in, that Doug was as well. Mainly, we like to look at Hebrews 13. I was in prison and you came and visited me. We feel that that's our job, but we do not evangelize in any way, shape, or form. If our clients ask, they're going to get an answer just like I'm telling you right here. I do it out of my religious conviction, out of the belief that everybody is one of God's children and that we should all be treated fairly and with dignity. But that's in no way, shape, or form dependent in any way, shape for our services. Now I forgot the rest of your question.
Funding.
Oh, funding. We get, I think, probably 25% of our funding last year was through foundations, and maybe 5 to 10% from churches, and the rest was from individual donors. Most of it comes from individual donors who are touched by our work in one way, shape, or form, whether it's through experience of a family or loved one, or a personal experience. Sometimes we also do get gifts from prisoners. We had a record number of prisoners give back to us last year. They're usually not very big gifts, $5 or $10, but there is something called a prisoner benefit fund, which is generated out of the funds that they make in their pop and candy machines in the visiting rooms. And those funds usually have quite a bit of money in it. And there's something where they call it a warden's forum gets together with different representatives from the prison and the warden, and they can grant gifts. And we actually were given gifts from 4 different prisons last year through prisoner benefit funds as well. But that's majority of the stuff is just through everybody giving small gifts when they can, individual donors. And it's my responsibility to keep talking about us so we can keep growing that donor base a little bit as well. And so, every little bit helps us along the way. And if you have ideas for foundations or anything like that you think might support us, please let me know about that as well. We've got a group that's trying to work more on the development end of things. We're trying to get a little more organized as we grow up in our organizationhood. So we're trying to make more of a focus on that this year. So any ideas are always welcome.
I'm curious about some of the requests. You kind of mentioned that there's a spectrum of requests that you get.
Yeah.
I'm curious about how much of this is some of the more complicated, maybe medical or law-based things, and how much of it is people looking for connection at the end of the day.
Okay, hold on just a second, and I can probably give you some educated answers on this. I can tell you about 20% of our calls last year were related to medical issues. And those are not just normally a one quick email back and forth and we can solve that rather quickly. We're close to the same number for Freedom of Information Act. And Freedom of Information Act is a really, really tricky thing to navigate. Fortunately, I have a little journalism history, so I had some education about it before I came to the organization. But we're right between 15 and 20% of our requests have to deal with FOIA as well. And I broke it down because I've got a new employee that's helping me. Our process, because there's so much back and forth between ourselves and the prisoners, it can be up to a 28-step process from beginning to end for a prisoner and us to get a Freedom of Information Act request filed, paid for, and sent into them in the prison. So those are really labor-intensive matters. Our most common request is an information request, and that covers a lot of different things. Sometimes people are just looking for names of attorneys or names of private investigators. Sometimes they're looking for articles, news articles about their favorite TV shows, different things like that. About 10% of our requests every month, between 5 and 10, were for People Search, and that's a service that we have volunteers run for people that are trying to get in contact with lost friends and family. A lot of the younger guys are trying to find old girlfriends or something like that, but people are just trying to reconnect, make connections on the outside, have someone to write to. And so we've got a great group of volunteers that's helping run that service for us now, which has been a huge factor for us while we manage that growth that I was talking about. And then there's a lot of little things that come in where they have questions about commutations, whether they have questions about reentry resources. Those are things where we try and save our answers so we kind of have canned answers to go back to. If someone's looking for reentry resources in Wayne County, we just copy and paste the template and email it to them. It's not reinventing the wheel every time, sending it to a volunteer every time and having them do all the research. We're trying to be a little smarter about what we do as we grow up as well. So sometimes it's baby steps, and sometimes someone looks at me and tells me something that's so completely obvious that I have no idea why we hadn't been doing it before. But that's how it goes. So I don't know if I really answered everything that you asked there, but
Yeah, I think so.
okay.
I think it's just good to hear the spectrum.
Yeah.
I don't know about anyone else, but I hear about these things, and I would assume that it's far more, legal or something. So to hear that your, organization there is offering far more, even than just legal help, that sort of thing is really interesting and hopeful.
Actually, we right now don't offer any legal help of any sort,
Sure.
simply because we're not attorneys. We're actually having a board meeting this week, and one of the future visions they're asking me about is adding legal services of some sort. I would like to do that at some point, but man, we've got so many other things that we deal with. that it's just, it really can be anything, you know, even we've got probably a dozen transgender inmates that come to us with different issues that they face. And those are, you know, those are really specialized individual issues, where you have to be really sensitive sometimes about some of the things that are going on. And so um, it's a different challenge with every message that you open up. I guess that's the good part of this job. The frustrating part is usually it's because they have a problem and they need help with it. But you know, the fact that they know and they're comfortable with us. It took a long time. Even when I started, it took a while for people to trust me because I wasn't Doug. And so as we're growing, we're trying to put out more of the name Humanity for Prisoners. And so people know, you know, if they see that name, they feel that same comfort that once upon a time they saw just by seeing the name Doug Chapkus. So, you know, we're growing, we're covering all these different things and trying to equip more people to be able to help it on our end as well, which is all, you know, trying to keep all four wheels going in the same direction.
One more question. I'm sorry to
No,
be
you're
asking
good.
so many, but since you lack legal personnel, do you have any formal linkages or have you reached out to groups like the Innocence Project or Brian Stevenson's Justice for?
Equal Justice Initiative.
Thank you.
Yep. Well, for wrongful convictions, we do provide a list. There's a number of different organizations, and including our own state attorney general opened up a wrongful conviction integrity unit where they're actually, yeah, it was a huge step, and she just got inundated with requests. They just got buried. But they're working their way through them. They've actually got a little bit partnership with Cooley Innocence Project right now. They got a grant to work on some of these cases together. So for those particular types of issues, yes, we do have, we give them all the names. You know, there's even a couple different innocence clinics down in the Chicago area that occasionally take on Michigan cases. And so we give them all the different names. If they need an application for the U of M project or the conviction integrity unit, we'll provide all that. We try and give them all the equipment to get them where they need to be. As far as, you know, there's a lot of questions about appeals, and then we get questions sometimes about paternity issues while they're incarcerated, about financial questions while they're incarcerated. You know, the best we can do is we find websites where they give good ratings of different attorneys, and then they give like actual client reviews where it's not just, you know, it's not just their rating system, but people can actually go and say, yeah, this guy's actually really helpful, or no, this attorney took me for a ride. And we try and just find them names of people that actually have decent reputations. You know, sometimes when you're dealing with obscure counties in the UP, there's just not that much to choose from, and we're just giving them the best names we can find. But we don't have a great legal referral service for different matters. I wish we did. I wish there was more support for stuff like that. But even the legal aid clinics in the state of Michigan generally don't provide any assistance with criminal related matters.
Do you have any social workers?
No, it's good.
Or could you accommodate a social work student?
We definitely, I think in some ways we all feel like we're social workers a little bit just with what we do, but no, we have nobody that's actually officially trained as a social worker, and we probably should at some point. The challenge with that is finding the right fit. But as far as if a volunteer was interested in doing some work like that, there's definitely some people we could connect them with that would like to have people to talk with. Absolutely.
All the social work programs in Michigan and everywhere require a 1-year minimum field placement.
Okay.
And you could go to Grand Valley, Michigan State, Western. The only hitch would be that you don't have a social worker on staff, but probably if there was a student interested in that, the social work school could arrange one of their faculties to supervise.
Yeah. I'm sure we could find a way. That's, you know, we've tried interns a couple times, and we we end up getting so buried that we forget to keep checking every semester. And so that's absolutely a great reminder for us to keep knocking on those doors.
This is probably on your website, but probably you're working mostly remotely right now, but is your main office kind of in Grand Rapids in normal times?
No, it's in Spring Lake.
Spring Lake.
Yeah, our PO box is still in Grand Haven. I still go to Grand Haven to check the PO box every day, mostly because it's pretty much on my way to the office. But no, we're right here in Grand Haven, Spring Lake area. We've been in this area for 8 years. I think we were in Muskegon for 4 years before that. When we started, it was a Grand Rapids base. That was when Doug was still working by himself. But we've been over here in Spring Lake. We trying to do social distancing, so we limit it to 2 people generally in the office at a time right now. And one of them is usually me, locked in my corner office where nobody has to deal with me. So we do our best for social distancing, but it was almost 2 years ago that we purchased this office. It's a little condo. It's got space to grow. So I've got desks ready for my staff members that I'm ready to hire. And we've got space to grow even beyond what our staff will be this year. So we're blessed with that. We've got a couple more years of payments on it, but we're solid here in West Michigan. We're not going anywhere.
And so your website probably has all the contact email and postal address and phone and all on the website.
Yep, absolutely. But I'll quick hammer it into the comments here as well.
Matt, you talked about there are video visits at 2 or 3 of the prisons currently.
Yeah, they just had an
Which one?
update on it today. There's a handful that the pilot program's been started in, and then there's a number of others. I think there's a dozen other facilities that they're scheduled to install the equipment within the next 30 to 45 days. So they are working on expanding that system, but it's been a slow rollout of it.
I think there's only 2, Cotton and Anlin right now, one in Jackson, one in Ionia.
Can I ask a different related question?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I am really happy to hear that you are getting requests from some folks in prison who are transgender. I'm a psychologist and I work with the transgender community. And I was curious if the prisons allow them to be, if it's a transgender woman, can she be in a woman's prison? No.
They give special room accommodations. They're supposed to give special shower accommodations. There's gender identity dysphoria committee, I believe, and there are some inmates that are receiving hormone therapy, but they really have to fight tooth and nail even to get that. Some even to just get the recognition. There's a status they're given that has to be given from medical.
Wow.
It's really frustrating because I have a transgender woman that contacted us a couple of weeks ago, and the committee won't recognize her, and she's like, well, what do I need to do? And that is a great question. So yeah, there are some accommodations, but no, they have not been put into the women's prison. They haven't even they haven't really done anything as far as accommodations other than making sure that they have someone, either another transgender inmate or a single person cell accommodations, but that's about the limit of what they get.
And you probably don't know as far as like people using their name and pronouns that they want to be called by and the pronouns that they want to be used. I mean, I I'm curious, I guess, about that, if that's respected by at least the, the staff.
No, no. Generally, you either go by your last name or your number in prison.
Oh, okay.
Usually,
Okay.
the most important thing they're reminded of every day is that stupid 6-digit number. They're not a name. They're not a person anymore. When you go somewhere, you identify yourself by your number. So yeah, as far as, the name recognition, it's not even, they can't change their name on their prisoner profile or anything like that. We just have to try and take notes and make notes as carefully as we can, so we can make sure that we'll recognize them as who they want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm really glad to hear that they are reaching out to you, finding you, and whatever way you can be of assistance is wonderful. Because I mean, that just adds a whole nother layer, right, of what they're dealing with
Oh
in
my goodness.
prison.
Yeah, the challenges they face, the harassment they face, it's
Mm,
it's appalling, and it's just, and that's
mm,
why so many choose to just conceal it instead
mhm.
of be out in the open with it, which is,
Sure.
it creates so many other issues in so many other
Yep.
places for them. It's
Yep.
just they're generally in a no-win situation where no matter
Oh,
where they're at, which is just it stinks, but it's, we just try and recognize it and help them get through life day by day.
yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for that work.
And I wanted to thank you for your work for Humanity for Prisoners. I got to know the organization pretty well, and your father, he worked with us. I was pastor at Plymouth United Church of Christ in Grand Rapids, and we did a lot of work with him. He was really helpful to us, and especially with some returning citizens. Same issue you talked about, with medical issues that had gone way too long. And I appreciate you growing the organization, because my experience is that individuals get involved and they may get an organization going and so forth, but then when they either age out or whatever, that effort kind of is lost, because it's just such hard work. So on all kinds of fronts, thanks for what you're doing. It's good work. It's hard work. And there are some groups that are doing reform, which is really important too, but what a morass that is. I just, again, want to think that I was kind of wondering how much there are other groups that get in, and a little bit to the other question about religious groups. Several religious groups go in. Any of them doing anything remotely like yours, or they all seem to be very conservative religious? Are they helping prisoners in the ways that you do at all, or is it just church services, or you have to follow their beliefs? That and when people get out, I mean, that's the other huge one. So choose any of those if you want to respond.
Okay. Generally, most of the church-related groups are just offering Bible study type services or mentoring type services, fellowship offerings, things of that sort. There is one group we know of out of the Plymouth area that's a little more robust with their support of prisoners. They will help a little. They'll get a little more hands-on if someone has an issue, like where they're trying to help a family member get a Christmas present to someone or something like that. That's a group where I'll shoot that kind of request at them, because I know they can make some things happen behind the scenes that aren't necessarily evangelizing one-on-one or to a group or anything like that, but still showing God's love in a different way, just a different opportunity for them. But to answer your question, as far as we know, there's really nobody that just does the one-on-one stuff. There's a couple other organizations that do one-on-one stuff, but it's in limited capacities as far as only with certain type of issues. But then they also work on other very important issues, either in county jails or we've found just this really narrow lane that we fit in, just working with inmates in the Department of Corrections, just on non-legal matters they've faced, just while they're incarcerated. You know, once they, even what the day they're released and paroled, there's generally some reentry groups, depending on where you're going, that are ready to help them, that we can pass them off to. But this little lane that we're working in is really what we try and focus. And you know, it's for us. I'll be really quick with this little story, but we worked with something called the Michigan Justice Fund that's developing, and they're focusing on all the issues from prevention way before, you know, before anyone's introduced to this system, all the way over to reentry and everything else. And as they put their final report together after a year of talking with so many organizations, they openly noted that one hole in their vision for the future is addressing current prisoners and the issues they face. And it was so frustrating because I participated with them for over a year, and I kept offering different ways to try and do it. And it's sometimes this one little lane, and these people in these very situations, we somehow forget them sometimes, and we can't do that because, you know, they were important to somebody before they get in, and they're going to have to do something, and we want them to be productive when they get out. So again, I've gone off on a diatribe when I was asked a simple question, but hopefully that answers a little bit of your question for you.
Thank you.
You bet.
Just one more question, then I'll stop. Do you hear from the prisoners who contact you about abuse by the prison guards? And what do you know about that? Is that still the issue that it was a few years ago?
Yeah, abuse by guards comes in many different ways, shapes, and forms. And there are definitely facilities where it is easier or better managed, and facilities where it feels like it's far more out of control. In particular, the facilities in the Upper Peninsula, where they're coming from smaller communities, and a lot of people know each other. They know each other outside of the workplace, you know, their friends, their family, their neighbors. Those are the situations where we have a lot of problems between our clients and the corrections staff, where it's, you know, sometimes it can be. We do have a separate category in our categories of types of requests that we get. One is called PREA, which is the Prison Rape Elimination Act, and we get questions about PREA claims, you know, be it from a guard, be it from another inmate, you know, and those are scary situations for the inmates, and there's a lot of different emotions and shame and embarrassment and things that go into those situations that make it, you know, hard to address sometimes. So yeah, there are definitely still issues. You know, guards even weaponized COVID in some ways. Some guys would often hear the reports of the guards saying they can't wait to get sick and bring it in. You know, things like that. If I get sick, I'm coming and sitting by you. Those are comments that get made to our clients. And, you know, I can try and contact the facility every time we have a situation like that, but it's a he said, she said situation. And one of the person that's involved is an incarcerated prisoner. So guess who they're going to listen to? And so sometimes that's where we turn to the counseling service instead and try and help them, you know, find different ways to deal with situations, or, you know, different ways to approach it. Or, you know, sometimes we do have to get involved, and we have to contact the facility and be like, you know what, these are the reports we're getting, and these reports are so troubling that you have to look into it, please. So yeah, I wish we could say that's getting better. Unfortunately, it's a situation that just evolves and finds different ways for guys to hold things over the prisoners.
I don't want to cut anyone off, so give a moment if there's any final questions or thoughts. I'll echo what Doug said, Matt, that I'm grateful for your work and your organization's work, and I'm so grateful that you came to join us tonight for this conversation. I think it's been really enlightening and hopeful, and I'm just really grateful.
That's awesome. I've heard a lot from Andy about the church and the great things that you guys are doing, and I really I appreciate the opportunity to talk about what we do. I always welcome conversation. I put all my contact information in the chat, so if anybody has questions, I'm happy to come back and talk about different issues at some point once hopefully we can put COVID away here within the next 9 to 12 months. I think it's going to be a little bit of a process still, but hopefully we start getting moving in the right direction with that. And there are still plenty of other issues that we can tackle together. But it's an honor to join you, and you know I'm easily contacted if anybody ever has any questions or anybody knows that anybody that needs our help in some way, shape, or form. Let me know about that too, because generally someone somewhere knows somebody that might need us in some way, shape, or form. That's what we're here to do.
Thanks. Well, thanks everyone for joining tonight. I'll mention as well that the next Justice Action Team meeting is on Wednesday the 3rd at 7. So if anyone's interested in joining us for that, feel free. Tuesday. Thank you. Tuesday. I have it on Wednesday for some reason. Tuesday.
Man, I hope you would let us know. You give us a bunch of ways we could get involved, and probably a lot of us are thinking about right now. But if you have like a more urgent needs, you know, let us know too. And like, gosh, we really could use whatever it is.
Yeah. I wish I had something off the top of my head other than just your support. You know, follow us on social media. Get on our mailing list, send me an email. I'll get you on our mailing list, on our email list, and just keep track of us and support us in whatever way, shape, or form you can. Prayers are just as important. Trust me, me and my staff need them some days. Absolutely. So any way you can connect with us, just connect and stay in touch, and then you'll learn of opportunities. You know, every once in a while we have something tangible that we need either in the office or some way, shape, or form. So there's definitely other ways that pop up on occasion.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Have a good night, folks.